Can you make a copy in his office?
Okay.
So I'm gonna put it on.
I think you did last time we were here.
Did I? Oh, then maybe that's why I didn't worry about the,
Here's my,
Email.
here's my original order. That order is kind of slimmed down, but that's the original.
that's my agenda, but you're welcome to use it, but just so I can see it.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the June 30th regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance. The members present are myself, I'm the chair, Councilor at Large Rebecca Lisi. To my left, we have Councilor David Bartley representing Ward 3, and then to my right, Linda Vacan, Councilor for Ward 5. Is there a motion to take up the first item?
Motion to take up item one?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Item number 1 is an order filed by Councilor Bartley to amend the Holyoke Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, Sections 161 through 163 regarding pawnbrokers, and Chapter 66, secondhand dealers, by requiring that all city businesses subject to these laws be required to photograph any merchandise it receives, buys, and sells, and to photograph any sellers and upload the photos onto a computer police system so that they can make an electronic record. So under discussion, Councilor Bartley, this is your order. I know that we have a guest here to speak with us this evening.
Yeah, we have Kurt McKenzie. Kurt, why don't you come on in?
Have them in there now. I didn't have, put them.
14th, 28th, and then August 11th.
Rebecca?
Yes, thank you.
Linda?
Thank you.
Okay. And,
Do I have one for the
Rebecca?
jacket?
yes, Linda, it's for you?
I'll put this one in the jacket. It's no big deal.
Okay. Okay, we have with us Kurt McKenzie, field representative for the New England State Police Information Network. And so I'm just going to do about a 60-second piece of background on this order and on Mr. McKenzie, and then I'm going to let Mr. McKenzie take it from there. So this order came from me about a year ago, and it was an idea passed along to me by a West Springfield police captain when I happened to be in West Side Town Hall on another matter, and it sounded like a pretty good idea. So basically, when I looked at the Holyoke Code of Ordinances, it says now pawnbrokers are required to keep a, quote, book open to the inspection of the mayor or city council or any duly authorized person. So the purpose of this order is to sort of bring the documentation of items sold, bought, sold, etc., by pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers into the modern era, to get a computerized tracking record. You're going to hear Mr. McKenzie tonight talk about how this is already used in many communities in Western Mass. There is no cost to the Holyoke Police Department. There is no cost to the pawnbrokers, secondhand dealers for this. I do want to mention for the record that several pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers were invited. I don't know if, oh, great, there's one here tonight, great. Great. And the police were invited as well. So, and then just a little bit background on Mr. McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie called me earlier today to give some background. He is a former 20-year veteran of the Springfield Police Department, sergeant, and a former police chief in Munson. Okay, so, and he's now working for Nespin. So, Ms. McKenzie, why don't you sort of walk through what we discussed earlier, and we'll ask questions.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Again, my name is Kurt McKenzie, and I work for the New England State Police Information Network. A little bit of background on what that is. My agency, Nespin, falls under a larger group called the Regional Information Sharing Systems. And that is comprised of 6 agencies that are like Nespin that cover the United States geographically. On that fact sheet that I gave you, up in the corner where the circle is, you can see that the country is broken up by geographic regions, and each one of those regions has what we call a risk center. So Nespin is a risk center. We are federally funded. We're a congressional line item in the budget, and we've been in existence. Nespin has been in existence since 1980. Our board of directors is the 6 colonels of the state police for the New England states, and there's also, from each New England state, 1 municipal police chief. We're based out of Franklin, Massachusetts. Our mission is to provide investigative resources and assistance to all of our member agencies, of which Holyoke has been a member since 1995. The membership fees are incredibly low, and I think Holyoke, based on the number of officers sworn, I think Holyoke pays in the vicinity of $150 a year as a membership fee. Some of the things that we do are analytical support, case analysis for investigators, digital forensics, equipment loans, up to and including surveillance vans. From time to time, when the budget is good, we have what we call confidential funds, which we'll give to member agencies upon application for the furtherance of criminal investigations. We also have several databases. We have intel databases, and they are connected across the country with what we call a federated connection to things like fusion centers, et cetera. So any of the officers that have accessibility through their workstation can access these. One of our databases is called RISPROP. A little bit of background on how that came to be. About 7 or 8 years ago, a detective in the Worcester Police Department spent his afternoons driving around the city in heavy traffic, going from pawn shop to pawn shop, and any place that by license had to report transactions. And he ended up at the end of the week with a big box of paper. He would spend his mornings fielding phone calls from surrounding agencies asking, did this get pawned, did that get pawned, can you search? And he became frustrated, came to us and said, can we do something electronically to make everybody's life easier? This is the result of that, this RISPROP database. There is no fee to the police department. There is no fee to any of the shops involved. In the time from then till now, this database holds somewhere in the vicinity of 9 to 10 million records. And I didn't know if there would be a computer here, so if there was, I could actually log in and show it to you, but I have some screenshots that I printed out. So basically what happens is, in the cities and towns that adopt an ordinance, and we even have some shops in the system that they don't even have an ordinance in that city or town, but they voluntarily supply the information. Most of it is through ordinance, though. The shop on their computer, either laptop or desk workstation, we give them a piece of software and we show them how to use it. When a customer comes in, They show identification for the store's protection and so that the investigators will know where it came from if it ends up being stolen. Oftentimes, completely unknown to the shopkeeper. People come in and they say, you know, I inherited this, or however I came about it. And in reality, when the store gets sold stolen property, they become a victim of a larceny. The officers, if they find that it's stolen property, will come in and take it because you can't lawfully be in possession of stolen property. So having that ID is crucial, because if it gets to the level of a hearing in court, then we need to be able to know exactly who was there, who victimized the store, and who victimized the original owner. So the store will enter the customer, all the pertinent information, and then generally take a photograph of the ID. And, you know, each one of these is a local issue. Our recommendation and best practice is to take a picture of the person there too, because it's very easy for somebody to say, I lost my license a month before this happened. It was somebody that looks like me. So picture of the ID, picture of the person. Any basic digital camera will do, or a smartphone that you can hook up and just.
So Kurt, and
yes.
and so, yeah, just keep going, but I just want to
Okay.
just point out that in my original order, and this is, you know, working with Evan as well, and so, and working with your predecessor, so I did put in there, require all city businesses subject to the pawnbroker or secondhand dealer laws be required to photograph any merchandise it receives, buys and sells, and to photograph any sellers. So I included that information.
Yes.
So-
So generally, there's a spot in the software for three things: a photograph of the person's ID that they used, a photograph of the person, and photograph of the item or items. And if there's, I actually printed some out. If there's, you know, you don't have to take an individual photo of each item. So if there's 4 or 5 items, you just put them on a contrasting background, take a photo of them, and that'll suffice. Once that's done, the shopkeeper simply saves the invoice, and then a button lights up that says upload data. They upload the data, and off it goes. The next business day, investigators from the town or the city where the transaction occurred, and also all of the other NESPN member law enforcement agencies in the region, will have access to those transactions. Quite often, the police will go to a burglary. One of the routine questions that an officer will ask during a preliminary investigation is, do you have any suspects? Do you know who might have broken into your house? Could be any number of things. Could be a drug-dependent relative. It could be anything. And they'll say, oh, you know, I know this person would never do this to me, but I'm going to give you a name. Well, many times the officers will go back, enter the name, there's the stuff. The other thing that they can use is their own training and experience. The local police officers are the resident experts on the criminal element in every city and town. So if they know that there's known thieves, drug-dependent folks, whatever it may be, people, you know, we've had things as ridiculous as neighbors feuding with each other. You know, the police know all of these nuances. They can go in, they can search by any of the key parameters, such as a detective gets information. A guy named Steve from wherever, West Springfield, Agawam, Springfield, Hadley, is dealing in stolen property. You can put in those parameters, Steve, from whatever town, and the database will return whatever information is there. If you don't have a suspect, you can put in an item. With the database growing by leaps and bounds, the city of Boston now reports to me that they are recording over 20,000 transactions a month just in Boston. So when I train the investigators how to use the database, you can't simply put in gold ring or silver necklace. There's just too many. I actually printed out everybody that lives in the city, everybody that says they live in the city of Springfield that's in the database for the last 30 days, and I stopped it at the last 10,000. There's a lot of traffic. Most of it is very legitimate, but there is a percentage of stolen property that shows up in any place where somebody is going to buy merchandise. So Once that is done, and the shop sends the data, it's a one-way connection, so they can't go in and delete it, they can't edit it. And this is a good time for me to say, I want to make it very clear that I'm not here to sell you our program. I'm here to tell you that there are other entities out there, for-profit companies, that have similar products. So I don't want, I'm not a salesman. I don't want you to think that I'm, pushing this. I'm just telling you how ours works, and then it's, like I said, it's a local option to decide what's best for you. The Holyoke Police Department has been using the pawn shop database for a number of years. The latest upgrade to it, excuse me, the latest upgrade to the software.
Mr. McKenzie,
Yes.
when you say the HPD has been using the pawn shop database, do you mean the risk prop in particular?
Yeah, it originally started out as the pawn shop database, so I kind of nostalgic, that's what I call it, but it's since been renamed Risk Prop. So they've been using it minus the photographs. They've been just getting the data from mostly outside entities. To the best of my knowledge, I think there's only 3 places in Holyoke that I wasn't able to do enough research in the short time that I had before coming here to find out if they're still actively reporting. But the investigator has the ability to drill down into whatever state and then whatever city or town, and then once if they hit Massachusetts, Holyoke, whatever shops are reporting or were reporting will be listed. So the investigators are able to know which shops are on that list. And also other investigators from outside the area. Yes.
So, do we have some shops that are doing this now?
There's 3 shops on the list that were
At one
and quite possibly could still be.
Okay.
But I don't know.
Okay, but you're aware that there have been at least 3 that did at one time?
Yes.
Okay.
And they could be now. Detective
And
Copeland.
except if I may, except for the photographs.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes,
right.
that's kind of important.
But in those cases, would our police department have provided them with the software, or would
No,
you?
formally it was what we call an extranet upload. There's a couple different ways they could have submitted the data. One could have been through an email attachment on a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet with columns. Another way would be our secure extranet, where they can click onto that with a username and password and upload it. The new version of the software, it's really the same program, it's just an upgraded version, allows for faster uploads and the photographs. They're the real benefits of that.
Thanks.
So what I'll do is, I'll give you these in order, and so you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. This is just what the officers would see when they open up or the risk prop main page. So those are the fields that an investigator that has NESPIN access can look at, and it goes down through name. You could put in, all right, I want to know everybody in, a detective could say, I want to know everybody that says they live in Holyoke that's had a transaction in the last year, or the last month, or the last week. You could put in a name, you could not put in a name. You could put in some optional searches, such as, I want to know everybody in Holyoke that's had more than 15 transactions in the last 30 days. I want to know everybody in Holyoke, or that says they live in Holyoke, that has had 10 transactions in the last 30 days between the ages of 18 and 25. You can do any number of database queries when you go into the database. So here's one. That's what you see when you basically open it up. And like I said earlier, this one talks about, I hit the checkbox for Massachusetts, and then I hit Springfield. Springfield has 42 stores reporting, so it lists them, and you can actually search the stores individually. But for more expedient searches, I always train the officers to just search the entire database all at once. So for your purposes, if an investigator at the police department typed in or checked off Mass Holyoke, they would see exactly what shops are participating or have participated in the past.
And Mr. McKenzie, do you know offhand if Springfield's 42 shops are participating voluntarily or by ordinance?
They have an ordinance.
They have an ordinance.
Most places do. I just was in contact with Agawam today, and I'm making arrangements to do the same thing that we did in Springfield and Fitchburg and Leominster and Gardner and Boston. So what I did was, I did, as I said earlier, I did the last 30 days worth of transactions for people that reported they lived in Springfield, Massachusetts. And I blacked out the people's names for privacy purposes and such. And I circled the second one down. It's got the photo there. And so keep that in mind as I pass the next one out. But like I said, I did the last 10,000. There was at least 10,000 transactions for people that say they live in Springfield just in the last 30 days. And this is what it looks like on the screen when the results come up for the officers. This is not what the shop sees. It's what the officers see. The shops have a different platform. So that second one down that I circled, if you click on the little arrow just to the left of that thumbnail photograph, it will expand the transaction for the officer, and the officer then can get a very detailed description, date, time. This shop did a very good job of describing the jewelry. As I said, that's very important because there's so many transactions in the database. You know, gold ring or silver necklace just doesn't cut it. So they did a very good job of describing it. And then it's the store's name, address, where the person lives, what they used for an identification, and a contact phone number. And then you see the thumbnail sketch has been greatly enhanced so that officers can compare that to crime reports, the person's identification that was used at the store, and verification that it's actually the person on the ID. And they can, the searches generally take anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds to come back. So very easy for them to do. One of the things that we recommend they do is officers that work on property crimes, as burglary reports, larceny reports come over their desk, they go in and they do their initial search. If they don't find what they're looking for or who they're looking for, they have the ability at the top where it says email alert, they can configure their parameters, set them up. It defaults, well, when you do an initial search, it defaults from today back 1 year. When you do the email alerts, it defaults from today out 1 year in advance. So if Kurt McKenzie is a suspect in a burglary and he's not in the database today, an investigator can put in Kurt McKenzie. It'll search every day for 1 year at about 11 o'clock at night. And if Kurt McKenzie shows up, the investigator will get an email the next day saying, you may want to look at this transaction. Many people that deal in stolen property, that commit these types of crimes, they don't run out right away to their local store, whether it's a kiosk at the mall, a pawn shop, a jewelry shop, and we have a variety of stores online. I went to a jewelry shop in Boston, in Copley Square. They deal in watches that cost 6 figures. So it covers all spectrums. So this is what the email alert looks like. And again, any of the parameters in those search fields you can put in. You can, if you see an Xbox come across your desk as a detective, here's the serial number, check it, it's not there today, put it in, and it just percolates. And if that serial number pops up, we're going to send an email to that officer saying, you may want to take a look at this and do some more investigation.
So I can ask a question. So if there is this system in place, which is really in real time, once the business owner gets their initial items in, which would be the hardest part.
Yes.
Whatever
Well, it only takes, once you get used to it, it really, I would estimate that it takes the shop owner no more than 2 to 3 minutes to enter a transaction.
Right, but when they first go on, do you have them put in all the items in the shop, or do they just start at a point
No,
in time and go
they start as
from there?
Yeah. And I can assist the detective. Sometimes detectives like me to do that, or I can train the detective. Many times, some of the younger officers that are very computer literate, that grew up on computers,
Yeah.
They know more than I do. And I'll show them how to do it, and they're like, oh yeah, this is easy, and off they go. Or sometimes they'll say, can you come with me in case there's a glitch? So,
So is there the possibility in this system then that the businesses, because everything can happen so quickly, once they're up and running on it, that they wouldn't need to hold the items as long?
well, that's a whole other issue because of staffing concerns. You're acutely aware that there isn't a police chief in the country that says he has too many detectives. So we don't get into that interpretation.
Okay.
What it does is, each city and town has regulations on how long people should hold on to things. And with gold fluctuating rapidly, I know many shop owners have said, hey, I could lose a lot of money in the next 2 weeks. We've got a global issue right now happening in Greece. The cost of gold could easily go up this week, several $100s. We don't get involved in that. So what we do is we enable the officers to have the ability to recover stolen property by getting the information quickly. If the officers that investigate those property crimes log in, do their initial search, and then set up an email alert, they'll be notified within 24 hours if they get a hit.
Counselor Bartley?
Thank you.
So just to that point, Counselor Bacon, Kurt, so what I did was I put in the order because I have friends in the Springfield City Council, and it was a little bit of a controversial issue in Springfield, but I suggested that dealers hold items for 30 days prior to resale. So I know that's not exactly the way it worked in Springfield, but I thought that would be a potential compromise.
Do you know what it is now?
No, that didn't make the cut in Springfield, so it's less than that.
I mean, here, do we have?
Oh, I don't, no, it doesn't speak to anything in Holyoke. There's no minimum time in Holyoke, not in the city ordinance anyhow,
No,
to hold it, for,
That's what
okay, I didn't see it in the ordinance, but, okay, then perfect. So then what I'm suggesting
So
is,
that would be consistent.
okay, what I'm suggesting is consistent the way it is now, so that wouldn't upset the apple cart in any way or form. Okay.
So, here is the expanded version of those transactions. Here's the email alert configuration. And then I have the last thing I have is what it looks like when the officer goes in and looks at his or her email alerts. And basically, it's a list. You have to name your email alert. So you can name it a case number, you can name it an item, you could name it the last name of a person of interest. It talks about a brief description of what it is, when it was created, when it was last checked against our database, the date and time, and then when it expires. Now, if an officer, I've seen cases where, I know of one in particular where a incident occurred in the eastern part of the state. There was a house cleaner that was suspected in taking a very expensive diamond ring. The investigator didn't have enough probable cause to charge this person. He kept that email alert going for 2 to 3 years, and wouldn't you know it, it popped up. And he was notified within 24 hours, went to the store, and the best part about it is that ring had a lot of sentimental value, and it was able to be returned to the owner. The person was subsequently arrested. The store was brought in as a victim because they didn't know that it was stolen property, and it was a happy ending for the victim of that incident. We've had incidents where, and it's not from our system per se, but it's because of the process. This, like I said, there are some for-profit companies out there that will sell a product to a municipality, but I had one in Fitchburg not long ago where it was a detective scrolling down the list of people that say they reside in Fitchburg, and he saw one person that caught his eye because he'd arrested the man several times, and he had a number of antique gold coins that he had sold at a shop. And the detective just said, my cop instinct says this isn't right. And he actually worked that case backwards without a victim and figured out that it was a person that this subject did handyman work for a couple towns away, went in to use the restroom. It was an elderly gentleman that had a very expensive coin collection. He left some of the stuff out, and it went in the guy's pocket, and off he went. So the detective was able to use his own training and experience and investigators' intuition to work that case backwards, find the stolen property before he even found the victim. You can have as many of these email alerts as you like. You know, officers can have, in some of the smaller towns, like Barry, Mass, one of the investigators up there said, I want to know every time somebody from town pawns something. It's, 99% of those are legitimate, and there's not a crime involved, but he wanted to know because he's looking for that, person that's a known thief or a drug-dependent person, and, that's how good police work is done. So those are the items that I have for you here, and, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Do you mind just clarifying a little bit about this example that you gave? So nobody had reported the crime, and because the person who pawned the gold coins had a known criminal record, the officer then investigated and found that this was in fact stolen property
Yes,
without it being reported?
yes. Yeah, and that's just good detective work. I mean, that's what, narcotics officers and having been a police officer for most of my adult life, cops see things differently than non-cops. If you're a narcotics investigator, I worked in narcotics in Springfield, most people will drive right by a street drug transaction, not realize what they saw. The cops see things differently. When you see a hand-to-hand and they're known people to you that are in the drug trade, the light bulb goes off in your head. 99 out of 100 people drive by and, they'll think that they're asking what time it is or shaking hands or something. So it's just good detective work. And, that's what the database is really, our mission was to facilitate the sharing of information and intelligence to assist police officers.
Any other questions from committee members?
I'm going to ask just a couple small questions, and I don't know if the gentleman in the audience, did you want to speak to us?
Yeah, we'll suspend the rules. And
Oh, okay. So, well, hold on, just hold the phone a second. And then, so I'm just going to ask Kurt a couple of questions, and then we'll let you speak. So Kurt, just so the public knows, as far as training shopkeepers and training investigators, do you do that yourself, or how does that work?
Yes. I cover Massachusetts, or at least everything except the Cape and the Islands. So I know most of the investigators in the local departments here. I'm a Western Mass guy, so I'm accessible to the detectives, and I give the shopkeepers my card if they have a question with the software, or if computers. If they worked 100% all the time, we wouldn't be having to buy new ones every few years. So if the shop gets a new computer and needs to be reinstalled, either myself or the detective will go and take care of it.
It's just a lot of ground to cover, so that's, okay,
I do a lot of driving.
okay. I'm okay.
Go ahead, Councilor
Thanks.
Bacon.
So in general, has there been a good reception to this and the implementation of it on
Well,
both sides?
it's one of our most popular services for
Okay.
the police, and quite honestly, there's been some apprehension before I get there on the part of the shopkeepers, but really, it is very easy to use, and I'll stay there until they're confident with it. There's only really 5 steps to it, and it's, you can't skip a step. It won't let you. It walks you through it by the numbers. And another thing that it does for shops that don't keep any type of inventory or any type of sales transactions, you're able to actually print out a sales receipt with the store's information on top that you can keep as the storekeeper and give to your customer. And because it's a database type piece of software, at the shopkeeper's store, there is a customer list that's searchable and an item list. So we don't, that's just built into it. We don't do anything with that information. It just sits inside the program. But shopkeepers have said, oh, this is great. I can kind of take a look and look at business trends and see, what's a busier time, or, repeat customers, things of that nature. there is a feature in the store version that they see when they enter the data for repeat customers. Once you enter Kurt McKenzie, 100 Main Street, Holyoke, Mass., and put my personal identification in there, my identifiers, if I come back 2 weeks later, if there's a line, they start typing my last name, it'll rise up to the top.
Don't
They
have
can
to
pick
do
it,
it
and they don't
all
have to
over
do it
again.
all over. What we
So-
do ask them to do is just say, Kurt, do you still live at 100 Main Street? Because maybe I moved to 50 Oak Street.
Right.
So I just ask them to verify the address, but for the most part, everything else stays the same.
So it might actually be less paperwork.
Well, they still have to do the transaction and submit it.
Right.
But they don't have to type all that out if it's a repeat customer.
Thanks.
Sure.
Is there a motion to suspend the necessary rules and allow the public to speak?
Motion to suspend.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I believe you're here to speak on this issue. When you come to the microphone, we just need you to use your name and address, or give us your name and address.
Kurt,
You
Kurt,
can-
why
you
don't
can
you
stay.
stay there?
Yeah.
Just-
Because there may be questions for you directly. And the,
It's on the side.
Hello,
yes, there you go.
my name is Dave Greenberg. My address is 448 Appleton Street. It's Pond Depot Incorporated. I was listening to your presentation, and a lot of things make sense. Some of them I don't agree with, but you said it wouldn't cost the shopkeeper any money. Now, I've invested a great deal of money into my computer system. I do believe it works with your New England, what's it called? Pond Master.
Kurt, got use mic.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some shops that use what's called Pawn Master, which is an inventory software system, and our system is able to integrate that data. I know there's a shop on Sumner Avenue in Springfield that uses it,
Right.
and it's a little bit different, but it's the same data, because Pawn Master allows for photographs itself. So you won't have to do double entries. You'll just have to, there's a way to export your daily transactions, and our IT people will be able to help you with that.
Okay, you see, every time I call Data Master, they charge me $150. Anytime I touch my system, they increase my maintenance fee every year, $150 or whatever they deem reasonable. So therefore, it will cost me extra money, I guarantee you that. I've been using your system, I think you've been getting my downloads, I hope. I send them to the police station
Yeah.
every Wednesday. I just think it's kind of an overkill on certain things where if you're going to take a picture of every item, most pond items are not stolen. I'm not going to say it's all guaranteed, but
Yep.
I would say 99% of all pond items are not stolen. When I buy an item, it could be stolen. Now, you mentioned Boston, Mass. How do they currently do that now?
Boston is using a combination. Some of them are using our secure extranet. I don't believe any Boston shops are sending emails to the PD. They got away from that. Previously to Boston coming on board with us, believe it or not, they were using paper, boxes and boxes of paper.
Yep. Because I talked to a constituent of mine who says that they only take pictures on items they buy. Is that true?
In Boston,
In Boston?
like I said, it's a local, we don't get involved in the enforcement of it. So however that ordinance is written is what they do. And,
Right.
and I don't,
And furthermore, he says it adds a lot of time. And he said if it was, the ponds, it's usually the same customers, month to month, repeat customers. The repeat item, to take pictures over and over would be kind of
yeah.
redundant. So I think it's a good idea to take pictures in certain instances. There's just some jewelry. It's very hard to describe. I agree. And it's not a bad idea. But I feel on the daily transactions of the ponds, it's kind of redundant. And I would feel that it would make my job a lot harder, and it would cost me time and money, really.
Yeah.
Can we,
I appeal to you not to do that. But, on the buys, maybe I could see doing it. And on hard items, I don't think they report on hard items on Boston.
What do you mean by hard items?
Computer
Yeah, no, they
with a
do.
serial number.
Yeah, they do.
He told me he didn't.
Well, there's probably, Boston has so many shops that we actually divided it into
It's
districts.
one of the biggest shops in Boston.
Yeah, and I could literally spend the rest of my career in Boston. That's how busy it is there. The lieutenant in charge down there of licensing is Lieutenant Jack McDonough, and he has a master plan to get all the shops online. To get back to something you said a little while ago, you know, if a guy comes in and pawns an electric guitar today, and he comes back 2 months from now and does it again, you know, I agree. Don't take a picture of that guitar again. If you're saving your photos somewhere, you know, it's the same guitar. You could just drill down and grab that.
But, you know, it's
Well,
going to put...
Mr. Greenberg, do you mind, just because I'm a little bit unfamiliar with the industry,
Yes.
do you mind describing the difference between a buy and a pawn?
Sure. Customer comes in, they need a short-term loan. You know, hopefully they're using it for a good thing like a car repair and such. What would happen is we take an ID. If it's a new customer, it has to be a valid ID. If it's an old customer, I've been doing business for 10 years and they're just missed it's just outdated. I know the customer. That's another problem I would think that you might run into because you want a picture of every ID. Well, I've been doing business with a customer for 10 years and their expiration date on their, you know, license just passed. I don't think I should deny them service. That's my opinion.
I don't, like I said, it all comes back to a local option. I don't know of any ordinances that say that a driver's license has to be active. I know of some ordinances that say it has to be a government-issued ID, like a registry card for alcohol if they can't get a license, or a passport. But if it's, I don't know of any that say you can't do the transaction if it's expired.
I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to your question.
Yep.
So they would come in with an item of value. You give a percentage on the loan, depending on what it is and who it is. Because if it's, you know, if it's someone who's a repeat customer, always gets it out. Obviously, you know, it's theirs. It's not stolen. It's a good customer. You give them a, you know, pretty much ask them what they need. You take down what happens in data age Pawn Master. If they previously pawned it, you just click on that item. It generates a ticket they sign. It has all their information. I always ask them when they come in, are they still living at the current address? Because we always send them a reminder letter. If, you know, 4 months go by, we send them a reminder letter. So we always ask that the information is up to date in the system. And they sign a piece of paper. We give them the money. We label that item in an envelope with an item number on it that matches their ticket. And we put it in the safe, as if it was jewelry, as an example. If it's a new customer, we have to take an ID. It has to be a valid ID. We put in the information, ask them if the current address is correct. We take a picture. We always take a picture. We save the pictures, are saved in the computer. Once their picture's in, unless they've greatly changed, we just keep the original picture. And then we go from there. And then what happens is we give them a loan, and out the door they go. What we do is every Wednesday, and I think it goes to your system, I download it to Hoyo. And one of the detectives in charge, Detective Cadigan, I think he's retired, was doing this, and he'd upload it to their system. Mm-hmm. So I'm already part of your system, as far as I know. I haven't missed a week yet. You know, every week I download all the information. Every buy, every pawn. On a buy, person comes in, we evaluate it. You know, we kind of see what it's worth. Look at the person in front of us. If it's something that doesn't seem right, we won't take it. We've denied many people, you know, just not interested. And if they ask why, I just tell them I don't think it's yours. They don't greatly like that, but, you know, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Now, there's people that are such good liars. I mean, it's happened where, you know, swore up and down, and there's very good storyteller. But it gets reported, and it's a good thing because when it goes through a legitimate business as a pawn shop, who's running it legitimately, every item gets reported and held for the correct amount of time instead of going to the local bodega or the local barber shop or the local drug dealer, God forbid. And you'll never, you know, the chances of finding that item down the road are going to be thin to none. So most thieves, and I would say, I think the National Pawnbroker Association's average is less than 0.5% of all stolen items end up in a pawn shop. And that's because of due diligence, and we do report, and there is access to police, and we do take IDs and pictures. So I don't think it's a huge problem. I don't think it's a bad idea to try and make a system better with your system. I just feel that it is an onus on the owner. Meanwhile, little shops pop up You know, it's the illegal shops where they go. They don't usually, I'm not saying it's never happened. Certainly stolen things have come to my shop and been found. Not a lot, not a great deal. And that's because everyone knows Dave reports all the stuff. I don't care if you're his friend or not. Dave reports all the stuff. So, you know, that's one of the issues I want to bring up, that taking a picture of every item would cause a lot of grief. Some people come in with 50 rings. It's the same 50 rings they brought for eons, but now I'm going to have to take starting the new system with a picture, I have to take now 50 pictures. I got to caretake these pictures.
With Pawn Master, you wouldn't have to. One of the things that we recommend for rings, and, you're trying to identify it, you need to take a picture from the top down, not the side. And, if you have some sort of thing where you can put a bunch of rings in. And
I'll have to buy one of those.
Yeah, you take, just from a jewelry store, those little velvet things that you can put rings in, take one picture of, a reasonable amount of them. I don't want you to take 50 separate photographs. Just, so the detective can blow it up and
Right.
say, these 49 rings are legit. This one was stolen from Grandma.
Yeah. Springfield, Mass. started this program when with the pictures? Last year?
Yes, last year.
Do you have any statistics on any increase in finding things?
Detective Jenkins from the Springfield PD gave me approximately 8 success stories in the last 3 or 4 months that solved numerous house breaks.
Right, but was the picture the crucial piece?
I know one of them was a picture of a tablet. They didn't put the serial number, they put in the model number instead, but the investigators tell me that the photographs helped them immensely. Not so much the photographs, well, I guess if I had to rank them, the photographs of the item, from the detective's point of view, they don't have to go to your shop, or what we've seen is we've seen people from Vermont travel all the way to Connecticut to pawn property because it was stolen, and they figure the local detectives aren't going to go that far, so they can print out a color picture of that. If it matches a larceny or a burglary report, show it to the victim rather than have to drive to your shop to take it and then
Right.
bring it
But
back.
another question, with a hard item like an Apple computer, you say, how would you know it was yours? Unless there's some feature mark. I mean, I put in a serial number. If you have the serial number, I could say, hey, you really wouldn't need a picture. You could do a serial search, right? On your.
No, it was marked up in some way, or.
I mean, if it was a mark, I can understand that. But if there's no mark, I feel it's kind of overkill to take a picture of a laptop computer. Unless it has some kind of sticker on it, or, and I mean, most of them don't, but once in a while, someone's got stickers on it. Maybe we take a picture of the stickers. We always make comment, though, has flower sticker or has,
Yeah.
So we're not trying to, it's not that I don't want to help out. I gladly, you can ask any law enforcement agency in this Pioneer Valley. I've worked with them all. I'm always more than willing to help them out. I give them pictures. They ask for a picture. I'll send them a picture. If they want to know if there's an inscription on a ring, I usually put it on the description anyways, but to double check something, I'll double check it. But I think it's an overkill when it's something so generic as a drill that doesn't have a mark on it. I mean, how do you know that's your drill? It comes down to a serial number, really.
Yeah.
Counselor Bacon has a question for you, Mr. Greenberg.
So, based on what you've heard here tonight discussed, what would change for you with what you're doing now if we were to adapt this ordinance?
I would have to take a picture of all the items that you suggest, all the items. I don't think we should do all the items. I think that would cause us, even if it was a minute more transaction, you do 50 transactions, that's almost an hour of your time, And if it's on things such as standard items like computers or a drill or something that's not marked, I don't see how that's going to help.
Yeah. Well, I can give you an example. You certainly, by your reputation and by coming here and participating, I have absolutely no reason to believe that you're not a legitimate businessman. However, by your own admission, there are illegitimate shops. And there's a shop in Massachusetts that was habitually transcribing the last 2 characters on serial numbers. So, I guess if you're going to talk about having ordinances or regulations or bylaws, you know, one of the things that's endemic to this type of discussion is everybody's got to be treated the same. You know, you can't say that, well, this shop is legitimate, so he doesn't have to do it, but the guy down the street, we think he's a little shady, so we're going to make him do it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the fact that we don't have our legal counsel with us this evening. And I think in order to really move forward on this order, we need to see the current legal ordinance and see where the changes would come in. Because it seems that if you're already taking photos and accessing a database, the ordinance that we would have set here would not really determine which database people are using. It doesn't determine, the details of the interface. It would detail the data that needs to be input into whatever system the pawnbrokers and the police department decide
Yeah.
are appropriate to use for this situation. Counselor
So, if I
Bacon.
can follow up. So, on the point of taking the photos of any merchandise received, the idea is to get at a serial number to identify the item if it is in fact the type of item that has a serial number.
Yeah,
That's really the issue, not the item itself. It's
Yeah,
so that
and-
you can identify that it is matching.
That's correct. And many times,
data.
the shops will take a photograph of the back of the machine, of the serial number or the camera or whatever it may be. In some states, they still are able to pawn and sell firearms at place, not so much here in Mass, but in some states. So, like I said,
And they don't take pictures of guns, though, do they? And especially not serial numbers. That's a little
I
bit of a
don't-
federal law, no?
well,
See, I'm having a little concern with the confidentiality. I know you guys been using the system. New York City Leads Online, are you familiar with them?
I am, yes.
Did they get sued?
I don't know if
There's
they
an
did or not.
injunction. New York City, they do the same thing you do. Maybe it's for profit. New York City has a system where you have to meet the guidelines of the city. If a police officer goes into the pawn shop and they wants information, it must be provided, but they do not report. They went to Leads Online. It's a similar system to yours. I don't know the exact differences, but similar. They went to court, and the judge found there was enough evidence to put an injunction on it. So I always report to the Holyoke Police, and I feel confident. If they want to do whatever they want with that information, it's out of my hands. It's in the state laws. It's in the city laws, and I feel confident. Reporting directly to you, if someone had the will and the means to sue someone under confidentiality, federal law, I think a case could be made. I'm not a lawyer, certainly not an expert in this, but cases have been brought forth, and lately with confidentiality, it's a kind of a big issue, and I think it's something that needs to be addressed. You said that the one police officer wanted to know every person that was pawning in town. Now, I know he's trying to do the right thing and be a good police officer, but he might be stepping over the line just a little bit.
Well, if he had the ability to go into the shop and read the book, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing, but a cop who would show up at your door every day to say, I want to know every person, I mean, I think that's a bit of an overkill. I think, there are people who pawn who want confidentiality. Not every person who pawns is on a low level, and confidentiality is important in a pawn shop. And I think it's something that could bite you in the butt one day.
So I
you
think-
get the wrong person crossed at the wrong time. Next thing you know, I am involved in a lawsuit.
So I think that these are legitimate issues. I think we have two more questions from the committee members, but then, again, because we don't have our legal counsel here, we're going to need to table this and look at the actual law in ordinance form, figure out what changes would come where.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make a comment because we got into a similar discussion when we were talking about the technology for the ability to read license plates. And where was the line of knowing whether it's in the database as a stolen car versus somebody who's just parked somewhere, and was there really any reason
Yeah, just
to be
cause.
looking at it and looking into whatever? So I think it's the similar type of argument. I mean, for myself, I like to support laws that are narrow in keeping business to be what it's indicated to do, but not so broad that it's truly a case of Big Brother everywhere. So but that's, I think, a challenge with all of these types of things where there's a collection of data. So I think it's a good point, and I think we'll pay good attention to it. Thank you.
Council Bartley?
Yeah, so I'm glad we had this discussion, Kurt, so thanks a lot, and Dave, thanks a lot. So I think, though, and so, you could cite any extreme example you want and hypothesize that that's a norm. But I could counter and say, well, has there been any federal lawsuit in this Commonwealth relative to these hundreds of towns that already have it? I'm suggesting no. So again, you take this extreme kernel of thought and boom, all of a sudden it's a lawsuit, I'm getting sued. You gotta come back, okay? Then you gotta look at our ordinances, which say it's all paper. Paper. That's not the world that we live in. Our city ordinances talk about it's keeping a paper trail.
Oh, yeah.
That's
why we upgraded.
I know, that's why we're gonna change, I hope, this ordinance.
Right.
And we're not gonna make it a broad thing so that Kurt and somebody over in Beijing can look at this. But we're gonna make it narrow enough so that law enforcement has the tools necessary to conduct investigations as efficiently as possible. It's not my concern that you're in this business. I'm an attorney. Do you realize how regulated I am? Do you realize how regulated banks are? We deal with it.
Right.
I don't like it.
Right.
Hold on. I don't like it, but I deal with it. You're in a business that's regulated. You're in the pawnbroking business. You buy stuff. You give short-term loans. You're going to have to deal with stuff. So that's it. And in taking photographs, if I may, of displays of rings, whether they're 50 or 37,000 or two, I'm suggesting it's not going to take an hour. I mean, that's virtually impossible unless you don't know how to press a button or there's something else.
Well, I was told it takes around a minute of your time. If you do 50 transactions, that's almost an hour.
We're not under debate any longer.
Right. And that
So
was
that's,
And, as far as breaching data.
Mr. Greenberg, you're not being recognized.
Okay, I'm sorry.
so again, I thought it was very helpful, all your information, and Kurt, yours is very helpful. I much appreciate it.
And I just want to stress this point. Really, we have nothing to do with risk prop. Even through our ordinances, we don't legislate, we have to use risk prop or pawn master or anything. That's a decision that the local police department makes, and then is a policy decision that they turn over to whichever industry that they're working with. So the only thing that would really be before us is the addition of this photograph of both the seller and the items that are being pawned or bought.
in the ID.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate that there are Leads Online, Rapid. They are alternatives to our program that we have. We developed this solely for the assistance of investigators working on property crimes. And if they choose, if the ordinance passes and the Holyoke Police Department chooses to go with another database, that's fine with us.
And sure, go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
Yeah, and I just want to say that our goal is to collect perspectives from both sides and information so that when we're making a decision and trying to craft an ordinance, that we're not just going down one path without considering other matters, and you both have been very helpful in that tonight. Thank you.
And Mr. Greenberg, do you have a card on you? Because we're likely going to have to take this up again with an actual draft of legal
I
language.
don't think I have a card on me, but I can write down my information on a piece of paper if you like.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to thank you also for inviting me here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think when we had the legal form in front of us and you would be able to, look at and comment on the actual legal form that we would adopt, it would be more constructive at that point in time to get your feedback.
Other businesses might want to come into.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you. And again, It just seems like what we're dealing with here is something fairly narrow about whether or not we're collecting photos of this different information, and the rest is the police department's purview.
So I'll make a motion to table for legal review and to receive any other information that might come to the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think we want a draft ordinance, if you don't mind.
I'll email you that.
Is that would be the legal form?
Yeah, a legal
Okay.
form to review,
Legal
a legal form to
input
review.
and the legal form. Okay.
So, Council Bartley, the motion has been made to table this item to receive a... Thanks. I'm writing on your agenda, I'm sorry. And again, from the business owners on an actual draft
second, yep.
ordinance.
Right, and legal relative to the question.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You know, about any concerns they might see in it.
Okay. And you have the information, and this is the dealer's information here.
Thank you. Okay, so the next part of our order has to deal with the DPW, and we have Bill Fuqua here. So, Bill, if you want to come in and join us.
So motion to take up item 5?
Which one we on?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is just make sure we should mention that we're leaving them on the table, though.
All right, so I'll make a motion to leave items 2, 3, and 4 2 and 3 filed by Counselor Alexander, who's not present, to leave those on the table.
Second?
All in favor?
I just want to read them into the
Okay.
so item number 2 and 3, and really item number 4 are all very similar because they deal with collecting bulk items from renters. So
It's just that that was stricken.
yeah. Items 2 and 3 are filed by Counselor Alexander that the DPW develop and implement a plan to accept bulk items from rental tenants. Item number 3 says that the DPW develop and implement a plan to accept yard waste from business properties and assess appropriate charges. And item number 4 also says that we allow renters to access the DPW facilities to bring refuse and surplus items. So all these items, since the makers are not here and they're very similarly related, I know that we've had discussions on them in the past that were very lengthy. I think it's in the best interest of the committee to simply table them as Councilor Bacon motioned. And Councilor Bartley, you did second that, right?
Yep.
So items 2, 3, and 4 are now being tabled.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
So motion to take up item 5?
Item
Second.
number 5, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. I did hear some discussion when we came in. I think at the last meeting, we were under the impression that the DPW Commission had to hold a public hearing of some sort. Council Bartley, do you want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, I think we should let Bill speak to it, because and I'm going on recollection, but I thought we had to give notice, and I'm not sure if that notice was sent for a name change of a street. And if that's the case, then we might, because I don't have evidence that when any notice was given. I notified the owner myself,
There's
but,
been no notice given.
what's that?
There hasn't been any notice
Okay,
sent
so,
out. And
but I'm not even sure if that's the process, so why don't we kind of defer to Bill?
do you know what the process is, Bill?
I'm familiar with the fact that we don't have anything to do with name changing. We accept streets or discontinue streets and alleys and contribute or vote on those, but naming streets or changing names of streets are strictly the purview of the city council.
Yep. I do believe that there is a public hearing associated with it. I feel that the name changes that we have done, like Roberto Clemente, for example, I remember like the abutters had to be noticed, and it became an overlay because the property owners on that street were concerned that it would affect their business and be very expensive to like change over their stationery and things like that. So it became a name overlay as opposed to a formal name change.
So if I may, just, and it sounds like we're probably going to table this anyhow, but let me just, so you're aware, this is Coit Street, and Coit Street is on both sides of Hillside Avenue?
It gets confusing.
And, well, no, that's not, and that's okay, it's all good, but it doesn't run in a straight line. So there's Coit Street on the west side of the street, which in my opinion should be the same, but on the east side of the street, there's a little jog to the north, and then you have to take a turn to the east, and that's where Coit Street is. And it's still Coit Street. So in my opinion, and when there's one house on that street, number 2 Coit Street, and the owner lives in Worcester, I believe. But in my opinion was just to rename it East Coit Street. That was going to be the extent of the idea. So,
Yeah.
so nothing, it wasn't going to be Bill Fuquay Way or whatever, it was just going to, I know it. So that was,
So I do believe that there is a legal process here, and we don't have our legal counsel with us tonight, so
can we forward this to,
we could forward it to legal and just get some feedback on the process, but I think regardless, I'll put it on the agenda for August 11th. You could just count on August 11th as the date.
so Madam Chair, that's fine, but can we just, so when we forward it to legal, we're saying to them, could you initiate the legal process, whatever it might be? Would that be the communication?
No, I think we just need to get some feedback from Kara as to like what the legal process is, because if there's any notifications of abutters or property owners, Ryan is capable of sending out those notification letters.
Oh, fine, then she can just spell it out for Ryan, and
Yep.
off we go.
Yep.
That's perfect.
So we'll put it on the August 11th agenda
Great,
and take it from there.
great, yeah. So I hope that makes sense to the committee, but that's a discussion I want to have.
Any
Is
points?
there a request from the residents there?
No, not at all. No, like I said, there's one resident, and they're tenants, and it's a single-family home. But in my opinion, if I may, I'm sorry. There's now on that corner of Argyle and Coit, again, Argyle and Coit, there's now a daycare which I think has up to 21 slots. Has 21 slots. So if we say we have emergency on Coit Street, and now we're talking about daycare, couldn't we more efficiently say Argyle and East Coit Street? It's really just, and nobody brought this up, it's just something I thought would make sense for discussion, and if it doesn't make sense, then I'm okay with that too.
I do also think that the business might be looking for a new location because they're growing. I don't know if that would affect your,
No, they're actually expanding on site as we speak, so there's been some feedback about that as well.
okay.
So do you need a motion to refer to legal to initiate?
No,
Or
I'll
what
just
do we
ask, I'll just ask legal to figure out what we have to do
So
to
just
get it
table
on.
then?
Just motion
Till
table.
August 2nd, 11th?
11th.
Okay,
Motion has been made and seconded to table. All in favor?
aye.
So moved. Item number 6, filed by Council Bartley. Is there a motion to take this item up?
Motion to take up item 6?
So moved,
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
aye.
So moved. So this is to amend the ordinances to either remove the no parking sign on Lawler Street near Barry Farrell's.
And Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that this has been complied with.
Second.
Motion made and
Discussion.
seconded that this has been complied with. Under discussion, Council Bartley.
So, as Bill was conferring with Linda beforehand, sometimes it's good to file orders, sometimes it's kind of gums up the work. In this case, I reached out to Bill and the city engineer and a law department. It turns out that sign, which was a no parking sign from here to the corner by Barry Farrell's, it's about 30 feet. It turns out that there was no city ordinance in place for that sign. So DPW has, and I think whenever I brought this up, it was, I don't remember, maybe it was February or January, and DPW went ahead and first of all removed the sign, and then when the ground thawed, they removed the pole. So I think our job is done.
All right. Any other comments, Bill?
No, I like those. So
Easy, check, check.
Yeah,
Great. So motion has been made and seconded that this is complied with. All in favor?
aye.
So moved.
Motion to table item 7?
Motion has been made to leave item number 7 on the table This is a order by Councilor Alexander that the DPW and city engineer join the council to discuss and consider a left turn only lane on Dwight just west of Northampton Street, B, a left turn only lane on Dwight just west of Pleasant Street, and C, making all of Dwight from Northampton Street to Linden Street a single lane road, possibly marked with bike lanes. I'd actually like to just get a progress update on this, because I know that there was a study coming out. Is there a motion then to take
There
this?
was no second to the table.
Motion to take this up?
So moved.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So I remember last time we had Matt in here, he said that there was a study coming out to look at traffic patterns up and down Dwight Street. Is that completed or in process? Or is
Not
it, you're looking for money to do that?
Well, I think that's the thing. He hasn't come to me to initiate a study, and that money would be the issue, is to try to identify a funding source and hire a consultant to come in and do the necessary traffic review and analysis to,
Is your mic on, Bill?
yes, yeah.
Can you bring it a little closer to you then?
So, yeah, we'd need some funding to support an engineering study to look into this at some point.
Can you let me know if there are other traffic studies that are currently in progress?
There's none that I know of.
Okay. And then are you seeking money for any other areas in the city for traffic studies?
Not currently. I think the last time we talked about traffic studies and funding was in a similar area. I think on Hamden Street, there was an interest to maybe redo the lanes and look at the traffic on Hamden Street, and then on School and Lower Dwight, but
Yep.
that never made it beyond really the discussion of the issue.
So, is there a way that we can facilitate or expedite in some way that we find money for this corridor, at least the Hamden Dwight corridors as a pair?
We can, we can try to pursue development of a scope over the summer, and when free cash is available, possibly look at, having a figure identified for what we would need to conduct the study and come in, with the mayor's support to see what free cash we can get for that.
Do you have a sense if it would be eligible for any money related to, because I mean, we just recently passed the Complete Streets Ordinance, and I think that we've been making progress on securing small pots of money for different types of studies, and maybe I should have Claire Riker in here at the same time to talk about this type of issue, but it seems that, would that be a candidate? I mean, considering that there's this interest in bike lanes and creating these east-west connections from Northampton Street to the downtown area.
That's a possibility. I'm not familiar with the funding opportunities through the Complete Street program, but I know Claire's very active in with the ordinance and in that area. She may know of some sources.
And are there typically, within the DPW engineering world of contacts, funding pots for this type of work, or this is something that is typically done in-house or through other, downtown improvement type of grants?
It's typically something, there's no other sources that I'm familiar with for this kind of study work. It'd be something that we typically fund in-house, and then if a project developed from that, depending on the size of the work, it might be something that we could pass off to a Mass DOT funded project for safety improvements or traffic mitigation, but those are usually larger scope projects that they would look to fund. But again, we need to define what we're going to want to look for, and then use that and the results of a study to figure out whether or not there's some available funding for it.
Great. So I'll follow up with Claire and see if she has any thoughts on this order, and how that might tie into a larger study. Any other comments on this item? I'll entertain a motion to table then.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded to table item number 7. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 8.
Motion to take up item 8?
Motion made and seconded to take up item number 8, which is order filed by Councilor Valentin. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Bill, we had passed this out of committee last time we met, and then the city council sent it back to us. There were some just really concrete questions about how many streets this item of creating a petition would affect. We've heard from Matt on this item, and Matt seems to be in favor of creating this petition process so that the city can work on unaccepted streets without having to actually take them on as city streets, but do like minor repairs. It seems that we're already doing a lot of minor repairs, and every time we enter these streets, we're taking on legal liability. Do you have the same position that it works in the city's interest to have this type of legal coverage, or do you have a different position than Matt?
No, Matt and I have talked about this quite a bit, and, we concur. These streets have developed over many, many years, and they're not always laid out and constructed to any kind of reasonable standards that the city, I think, would want to adopt and accept, the full responsibility for. But I believe this petition, this ordinance would allow us to continue to do some maintenance and provide some services that were similar to what we're currently doing, but not put the burden on the city for all of the responsibilities, the liabilities that would come with, poorly designed and poorly laid out right-of-way.
So I think for the next time that we put this in front of the council, we'll need a concrete list of how many unaccepted streets there are in the city, as well as how many have actual houses on them. And if you could in some way rank the level of disrepair on those streets, high, medium, low, something like that, so we could get a sense of like how many streets we might be doing this type of short-term work on. Councilor Bacon has some questions as well.
Thanks. I just want to let him get his notes down before I ask him more questions. So my concern with this ordinance was, I'm in favor of limiting the liability of the city, but it occurred to me that if there was a big pothole on a certain street, that by the time they got done going through the process of getting the petition, that it would be so onerous that it might be the next season by the time the petition made its way through the various spaces. So I was wondering what you thought about if it is, say, the nature of potholes, which is something you've kind of just been going ahead and doing anyway. Could there be a way to write in the language that once the neighbors file a petition for the pothole maintenance, that it would sort of be a standing thing, or at least only would need to be done once a year? Because, I mean, can you see every pothole? You have to go through this?
Well, I think
It would seem to be,
I don't think it would have to be for every pothole. I think it would be like 4, quote, potholes on the street.
well, right, but I mean, my question is, because I think this just occurred to me later. I don't think we set any kind of a timetable that, say, if a petition was filed for specific repairs, that it might be in effect for a year, rather than event by event. I don't know. It was just a thought.
Let's see.
I would, and I haven't read all the details of this. Matt's been pretty much handling it for us. But if it were, even if it were, initial petition after this is passed that generically speaks to, basic maintenance, as an example, pothole maintenance, and it would just go into effect and be that way in perpetuity.
Oh, okay, so it wouldn't even need to be annual from your point of
It
view?
would never, I don't think it would ever be followed up and be consistent. If there were ever an issue or problem and, there were, litigation and, attorneys got involved, there would be a process that would already been followed. We'd have this created and, the work that we would be involved with would have been allowed under the original petition. So there may be some language to just make it a one-time thing, I would guess.
All right, well, that would simplify it unless, of course, there was a big turnover of property owners. Then probably have to look at it again, but, okay, thanks.
Yeah, the list that we will put together, we were actually working on a few weeks ago. I didn't know it was something that the committee had wanted, but we're looking at there's a couple of different lists. We're trying to come up with which ones are, need to be addressed, would fall under this, would just need regular city acceptance. I think there's Liberty Street, I think was filed recently.
Separately, yeah.
That, I think I've been through all of the streets over my term here, and we've paved every one of them that were eligible under state highway funding rules, except for Liberty Street, and a couple of those are coming along that we need to have just formally accepted that never fell through the cracks, whatever, over the many years, that we just need to do some paperwork, housekeeping on, and then, then the other streets are gonna be much smaller.
And can you break those streets that you're going to recommend that we accept out from the list
Yes, okay, yeah.
so that we are not duplicating the numbers? Councilor Bacon?
And it seemed to me, since I guess there's a public hearing process that has to take place to accept the street, is that correct?
Yes, it starts with an engineering plan, and Matt and I have been looking at that, or actually Matt's been looking into that, starting with like Liberty Street, what drawings, what plans that they may already have on the books that could satisfy, for the record, what we need for survey information to relay out the street and know our boundaries of where the street ends and where private property ends. Some of the streets, I think what we're going to find is that we don't have those detailed survey plans that we would like to have on file. So I remember doing this 15, 20 years ago. We started to try this. We had a consultant working on the list and putting some of these drawings and plans together, and we got a number of streets done at the time until funding ran out. But I think now we're dusting off those old files, looking at what needs to be finished to, kind of get the list down to, the bare minimum number of lane miles of streets that need to be accepted.
So before you said you might not have all the numbers available in the files, I was thinking it would have been an easier process to bundle, 5 or 6 streets together and do the public hearing for all of them. But if there's a lot more work that has to go into the other ones, then I guess that wouldn't be
Yeah, we did
practical.
that, 15 years ago or so when we did this. We did a bundle of streets, and there was a whole list, and we had all the drawings, and then we just kind of went through a grand, one big meeting and got those taken care of. I'm not sure whether we can do the same now, or maybe 1 or 2 or 3 here.
Yeah.
Depends on, what we'll do is once we identify, the streets that we need layouts and plans for, we're gonna have to hire a surveyor, come in and do the survey, and then we'll put them on a drawing. So that'll take some time.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Great. Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, and Bill, that's what I was going to ask. So you would have to hire a professional land surveyor,
Correct.
right? So I think it might be helpful to some of us to at least get it all sounds good that, let's accept Liberty Street, or let's accept Parental Way, or whatever it is. But then we have to think about it, that these are private ways with private property, and now we have to hire surveyors and do surveys, and then we have to I assume go back to the planning board, and that ultimately we have to record documents in the Hampden County Registry of Deeds. There's a series of steps, and there's a cost to this that I have no idea what it is. Do you?
Yeah, we did kind of talk about that in general as to what the net gain or loss would be if we go through this is the law of diminishing returns. As we get down to this handful of streets that need to be accepted, how much are we going to gain? What we're looking at is the more miles of accepted street we have is the basis of our formula for state highway money for repaving and road maintenance that we use every year through Chapter 90. So the more miles of road, the higher the number is. And we kind of just on a napkin one day, we've kind of figured out what we get per mile, and I think for the example, we're working on Liberty Street over a 20 or 25 year lifespan. We would by accepting it, we would pay for the investment in an overlay through receiving state aid. So
Over a 25-year, it would take 25 years to recoup that investment, you think?
well, it would allow us, by accepting the street, it would allow us to access state
No, I
grant
got
money
it, I got that.
we would otherwise, if we paved it ourselves, we would have to come up and come up with the money out of our own coffers. But by having it as an accepted street and getting state aid money, it would actually, we would get paid back in annual state aid allocations for that street over a 20 or 25 year period, which is basically the life expectancy of the pavement that they were paying for. So it actually worked out pretty
To our
even Steven kind of thing.
Even at best is what it sounds like. But-
Yeah, but.
Okay, all right. I mean, I guess it makes everybody feel good to say now the street's accepted, but I don't think I'm not gonna be, I didn't realize until now, but now I do realize that there is a cost to all this, because I wasn't thinking out clearly. There's a potential benefit, but to see that benefit is gonna be, pardon the pun, way down the road. So,
No, the way I understood what Bill was saying is that we benefit from having an increased number of streets in our Chapter 90 formula. For 25 years, we get to reap that money without having to spend it on that street. So we just increased the amount of money that we are eligible for 25 years until we have to repave that street.
and so what I heard him say is that, but I heard him say it's gonna cost us a certain significant sum yet to be determined to make this a public street, Counselor. So by all those aforementioned costs I mentioned, hiring surveyors, which are not inexpensive,
Right.
and recording documents. So there's a certain sum they're outlaid, and then by adding that Liberty Street, which is, what is that, a quarter mile, I'm guessing, maximum? Yeah, maybe, whatever it is, to
0.2 miles.
to the total sum of okay, maybe that quarter mile is going to, over 25 years, add up to our total volume of accepted roads, and maybe over that time, we'll recoup the benefit to, is it Chapter 70? Or
90.
Chapter 90, I'm sorry. Chapter 70
So maybe we
schools.
should pick a long
So,
street.
so, right, so I heard him, Counselor, I heard him. I just want to emphasize the point that there's an initial outlay of staff time and then hiring outside professionals to pinpoint all this stuff. So that's the point I'm just trying to drive home now. So, and to other counselors' points, it made sense to bundle them and do a whole bunch a year, but boy, now we're really talking exponential costs, aren't we? So,
Yes.
and to what end? So, I guess I would like to hear more about the, more than a back of a napkin type of a thing. I'd like to hear more of a, real cost estimate before you start going down this road, but that's my opinion.
That's a separate order.
I just gave my opinion,
I'm just
Counselor.
saying- I'm just
I-
saying-
I just gave my opinion.
I'm
That-
just
that's-
saying
That's all I'm doing.
it's
I
Going
we
to
should-
take
we
a
should wanna
separate
do that.
order.
Yeah, I'll file a separate order. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
input.
So is there anything else on this order so that we could get it back out in front of the full committee?
Well, the council wanted the list of the streets, right?
Yeah, that's all that I can say to
And
that.
then beyond that, to the point around the petition and how often it would need to be filed.
I think we should do like a 5-year, like a petition
But
that's
I
good for
mean,
5
rather
years.
than each time there's an event,
Yeah,
right? So I would say,
we'll need legal to redraft something also.
make a motion just to amend the legal form to allow the petition for general repairs to be in effect for 5 years, so they didn't have to petition for every event or repair.
Is there a second to that amendment, that the petition be in effect for 5 years for minor repairs that we listed in the ordinance?
I'm not clear on that amendment.
So
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, it was just a,
the way that we set this up currently, it says that there's a petition process in which 75% of the property owners can petition the city to do minor repairs on their road, on their private way, without the city having to take on ownership or accept it as a city street. And we limited the types of repairs to pothole repairs and what's the word for
patching.
patching? Yes. Minor repairs and pothole repairs and patching. We said we're not doing any sort of sewer work. No drainage.
No, just limited to what it was. Okay, I got that. All right.
And so the only difference, the only amendment that we're making here tonight is that we're going to say that instead of having to petition each year for each different pothole that comes up, a petition can last for up to 5 years, with the expectation that the property owners gave that permission once and shouldn't have to be made to re-petition the city every year for these minor repairs. But property owners do change hands over time, so 5 years seems like a,
Well, just under discussion, if I, can
absolutely.
okay, so I hear that, to try not to overwhelm them, but we're talking about, is it 9 houses or 6 houses? I'm not sure what it is.
On Owens Place, yes.
Owens Place.
But this is not an ordinance for Owens Place, it's an ordinance for all unaccepted streets to petition us.
Right, but, I mean, owners change hands all the time, and I'm a new owner that comes in, and now I don't think we should make it a 5-year blanket. That's just my, I think that's too long.
Go ahead, Councilor
I'm the
Bacon.
one that had originally made the motion to amend, and I was actually thinking a year. Because my thinking was not so much a length of time as it was, I just felt that some of the unintended consequence of limiting the city's liability was to make all the people have to get together every time they wanted a crack filled or a pothole filled or a patch done. And I don't think that's really what we were going for. But I was thinking maybe once a year would be adequate.
Yeah, I
For
think
1
that's,
year.
I think that's
Do you
fine.
know?
Yeah.
So
Is that what you said?
I will amend my motion
Okay.
to say that a petition would be valid for 1 year.
Oh, I'll second, yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
That's good,
that was my intent.
yeah.
So-
Just a question then, if the petition's not renewed, do we go down there and continue doing maintenance, which is going to be difficult to monitor and to administer, I think, over time? That's why I was looking for something like, do it once and let it ride until,
But you're gonna have different property owners.
I'm not sure, I
yeah,
guess,
but which property owners aren't going to want us to come in and patch the road and
Well, they-
maintain it?
to that point, I think that there probably wouldn't be a problem with the property owner, but there would be a problem from a liability point of view if you got to the point where you had a petition sitting there and none of the people that had signed the petition were the owners. And then a problem comes up, so you thought you limited your liability, but oops, 6 of the 8 are not 6 of the 8 that signed it. So I think you might end up with a crack in your limited liability there.
True, okay.
And I don't know who should track it. I think if they have a database in the clerk's office, that's
Yeah,
what's
it
going
would
to have to be filed. I would
Yep.
think the clerk's office would need to track it.
And then one other point, I don't see it here, but snow removal. We do snow removal on like Owens Place and a number of these unaccepted streets. And, well, refuse collection probably wouldn't be road maintenance and be eligible, but snow removal, I would think would be a type of road maintenance. So just throw that out.
We were under the impression through our previous discussions that snow removal is something that you're doing and it's not creating, or actually sorry.
You're on the property. is
You're
the
on the
issue.
property is the issue. I mean, we really felt that we were thinking that this was about repairs, and actually the state statute that I think this is drawn from says the type and extent of repairs, temporary repairs, so it doesn't really refer to snow removal.
Okay.
But it could be argued that if they let the plow go on their private property, it's kind of like if you stood there and let me take your picture, you gave permission. But,
Okay, no, I
don't know,
it
but
just
we didn't
came to mind.
address
It's something I can discuss with the law department, because
Yeah.
there are Owens Place and a few other streets that are unaccepted, as, we do maintain
Do you
them.
do Cedar Hill Road for snow removal?
Yes,
That's crazy.
yeah, it's a major, it's a priority because it's a hill and there's a number of houses there, but it's a mess legally and all. Those streets are laid out all over private property, and it's a nightmare when you look at it on paper. But we do patch it, and we pick up trash up there, and we plow it in the winter. So,
Huh.
well, looks like we might have to amend it as soon as we get it done, but
So the amendment that I heard was that we keep the petition in effect for 1 year. It's valid for 1 year. I think we should also make a note somewhere that they're filed and kept in the clerk's office.
Okay, but to Bill's point, do we have leeway within the past discussion that we had and with it coming back to committee to add in to access the private property for plowing and trash removal also? I mean, is it within the keeping and the character of the ordinance enough just to put that language in? Because the issue was really being on their property, which is not a public way.
So I would say
don't know.
we would need legal counsel, and we should just table it for another night.
Or I could make a motion that we add the language in if it's acceptable within, and then they'll amend it if they say yes and not if they say no. I mean, the issue from DPW's point of view was liability.
Yep.
So if she says.
Well, I'm okay with the
Plowing and
language you
trash.
added, Linda, but I think we ought to table it
Okay.
to have a little clear discussion based upon Mr. Fuquay's points.
Yeah.
About, and then your point too, I think are good ones about liability, so, I would wait to hear from legal counsel before, and then, finally, do we address all the issues that were brought up at city council? Have we addressed?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the concern was how many streets was this? And from what I understood, it was 42 or 46 streets out of 500 total streets in the city that are currently unaccepted streets. How many actually have residents on it was another question. So like really, what's the breadth of the responsibility that we're taking on here?
Right, well, so I think Bill's preparing that list for us.
Yeah, but that's all I remember from city council meeting.
I think so, but why don't we wait to have this committee get the
right.
list back?
All right.
And then we can speak intelligently to the rest of
Well,
them.
I mean, a list, if it was just a list and not these other questions that came up, I would say we could get the list and present that to the full council without having legal counsel wouldn't be making any further amendments. But now we have several amendments as well as these two questions about plowing and trash removal. So it seems that
Fine.
we're at this point where we need to table.
So, motion to table?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to table. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
But I think since he brought them up and we're kind of taking care of 2/3 of the concern, but then we have these other ones hanging there, if we could just roll them in, it might make sense.
It's true.
maintenance and repair or whatever. I don't know, but I guess we'll see.
We're not meeting till the 4th anyway, as a full council, so I feel like we have some time over the summer to bang it out again.
So we're tabled to the 11th on that,
Maybe the 28th?
28th?
That way we can actually vote on it.
Oh,
before
right,
it's-
right, right. So, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Sorry about that.
All right, thanks, Bill.